So, Made in Abyss is a manga series that I have only recently just read. It started whenever I watched the anime series and I made a video on it, and then in the comments, people were encouraging me to go ahead and check out the manga. So, of course, I went ahead and checked out the manga, and I was definitely not disappointed. Now, before I even get too deep into talking about this manga, I'm definitely going to have to put a warning for some people. It definitely deals with a lot of dark tones, so I don't know if it would be appropriate for a person of every age demographic to consume this, simply because sometimes it can get pretty dark. I know that some people really like dark tones, and I know that others really tend to stray away from them due to having traumatic experiences or anything like that. I don't want anyone to get triggered reading this because, like I said, it does get dark at times. Me personally, I really enjoy the dark tones that the manga can have. So with that being said, the manga definitely has some really amazing artwork. And I know some people don't really care for artwork. In a manga like this, the artwork is so good that I feel like I have to mention it, especially because a lot of the character designs are typically disturbing. So I don't think they would have the same effect if they were drawn poorly, because if you have a detailed image of something that's disturbing, it's going to be a lot more effective at getting you to feel, conveying the emotions that the manga could intend it. I'm not going to get too deep into spoiler territory in this video simply because I feel like others who haven't read the manga might stumble across this and might want to check it out. And to that I say you definitely should. I would say that it's one of the better mangas that I've read in a while. It does a really good job of sucking you into the story and making you want to be very invested into the characters. And it does this through a plethora of ways. For an example, a lot of the characters in this series have a very cute lolly aesthetic. And what I mean by this, for those of you who don't know what a lolly is, basically a younger cast of characters, I guess, is the easiest way to put it for people unfamiliar with the term. By using kid character designs, I think it does a better job of making you feel that unease, because most people tend to have a built-in instinct to protect children. Some of the things that happen to these children in this manga is very disturbing, but I would consider it art. Sometimes art just comes in a darker tone or a darker form, but that's still art. I must say, this manga has a really well written narrative, and the world that this manga takes place in is very interesting. The abyss in this story is so vast and it's so interesting. You never really know what you're gonna get from the abyss. A lot of people challenge the abyss and they end up having bad things happen to them, like really bad things. There's definitely a deeper message to this manga. For example, a lot of the characters tend to be really greedy and they end up in a bad situation due to their greed. So probably in the future I might analyze the story and the narrative a bit more, but this is not going to be the video for that. The composition of the manga is pretty good too. It seems like a lot of the panels are hand drawn. I don't know if that was the best way to describe what I'm talking about, but if you read the manga, you know what I'm talking about. I'll try to explain it a bit more. Basically, what I mean by that is some manga don't really care about the composition and the paneling. Like with Made in Abyss, the paneling feeds into each other. For example, if there's a slash or something, the panel will bend to fit the slash, so it looks like a transition and it makes the read really easy. When I say it makes the read easy, I just mean it makes the flow of reading easy. That doesn't necessarily mean that the material being presented is easily understandable. Honestly, in my opinion, I would say this is probably gonna require you to have a higher reading comprehension. I'm not saying you gotta be Einstein or anything to read this. I'm just saying you have to really pay attention to what you're reading, and you have to really take it panel by panel and understand what's going on, or else you kind of run the risk of getting lost and not really understanding what's going on while reading. I feel like I should mention there is some uncensored nudity in this manga. In the anime it was censored, and in the manga it's not, so I don't know if you guys would be turned away from that, so I just thought I would mention it. It didn't really turn me away. I think that the Abyss in this series is honestly very beautiful. It always seems to suck me into it, and I feel like if I was in the world of Made in Abyss, that I would turn into a cave raider, because there's so much mysterious things that happen in the world of Made in Abyss, specifically in the Abyss itself. There's just a bunch of treasure, but there's also a lot of danger, but that's kind of what makes it interesting. I mentioned earlier about some of the imagery and how it could be darker and convey a darker tone, but what I didn't mention yet is the fact that this manga is very psychologically driven. So at points, there's going to be characters who have to deal with a insurmountable amount of physical pain. But at the same time, there's also characters in a story who have had to deal with some very traumatic psychological experiences. And sometimes psychological trauma can be more damaging than physical trauma. And while you're reading this, you really feel bad for these characters because they're so humanized in the way that they're portrayed that you have pretty much no choice but to feel bad for them, because you kind of sympathize with them and put yourself in their position, and you would not want any human to go through some of the stuff that these characters have to go through. This is just one of those stories that once you pick up, you're never going to want to put down, because the narrative is so good and it's a journey. So pretty much Reg and Rico start off on their journey, and you get to continuously follow them as they descend into the abyss. This manga is divided into arcs, and it has a lot of content within this manga. So if you pick up this manga, you're going to have a lot of content to read and a lot of arcs to go by. Personally, I really enjoyed every arc so far, and I'm looking forward to see what the future has to hold for this manga. From what I hear, chapters are released kind of infrequently, which isn't a problem, because I am the type of person who will allow the mangaka to have as much time as they need in order to deliver a quality product. However, if you haven't started the manga, I would still suggest you do so, because it has a lot of content. Speaking of the content, I think it's important for me to mention that they do have an anime, so I want this to be adapted into an anime, and I think once it is, I hope they do it correctly, because there's a lot of content, as I stated. So the fact that this is so good, if Made in Abyss ever gets a season 2, it might be one of the best anime of all time, honestly, if they do it correctly. So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the Made in Abyss manga. I really enjoyed it. It's probably in my top 10 manga right now. The first couple volumes of this manga have already been adapted into an anime, and I would probably suggest you check out the anime first, because some of the shock value in the anime is better delivered than in the manga, simply due to the fact that they have the use of sound effects. So yeah, I definitely recommend you check out the anime first. If not, you could just jump right into this. It wouldn't really make a big difference. I did make a video on the anime, and I highly suggest you check that out if you're into Made in Abyss, or if you just want to learn more about the story maybe. I'll leave that down in the description. Other than that, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. It's been your boy NeoXO, and I'm out.